All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, Carl Rominger here. Show's Weekend Appointment, the show where I answer your legal questions. If you haven't done it already, make sure you go to weekendappointment.com, become a registered member. That way you're going to get our updates, our emails. Next week we're going to have Mark Virginis with us to talk about all things financial. And let's make sure you're a registered user so you can get that free will kit. And if you don't know about the free will kit, well, you should. Make sure you sign up and get it. It's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to beat the dead horse, but I will remind you guys a couple times over the next hour to go ahead and do that. Deb, you're on with Carl Rominger. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm nervous, but
that's okay. Don't be.
I've been being sabotaged by a coworker at work for a year and a half. As a result of it, I have been put on probation, threatened to lose my job, told to get another job, banished from my position to the back, got a bonus in between all this, actually 2 bonuses in between all this, but they swear up and down that I'm not being sabotaged. I had all kinds of documentation, and they said that, I wasn't allowed to make Xeroxes, and because I work for a medical practice with the HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
So, I proved, I feel, many times that this girl is sabotaging me. Why a computer allows appointments to disappear, I have no idea. It should not be allowed. I know how she's doing it, but they will not listen to me. I know that an employer can do anything he wants to me as long as he doesn't discriminate against me. But what is my recourse about her? Anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could sue her for tortious interference with contractual relationship,
okay.
Meaning that she's doing something to interfere with your employment contract. Even though it's a work-at-will contract, she's still interfering with that.
Okay.
Also, you could get an injunction against her if you could prove it. Now, of course, the employer might just go ahead and fire you and say, I'm not going to keep somebody around who's suing one of the other employees.
Right.
And I'm not sure that that's something you could prevent. But yeah, you have a lot of remedies. The other possibility is if you could somehow prove to the employer what's going on and get them to actually pay attention, then maybe you could get that person discharged. But, of course, how do you do that if they're not listening to you?
Yeah, something may be going on the side personally,
Okay.
I mean, she doesn't like me. She never liked me. And then a year and a half ago, it escalated to this.
Right.
And I mean, I'm a model employee, but the doctor hates my guts.
I'd find a new
All
job.
the lies and everything she's told.
And that's my bottom line advice is I'd find a new job and get out of there as fast as possible. But, of course, in the current job market, that sounds great,
Exactly.
but it's not exactly that easy to do.
And he pays well, probably, to put up with this kind of crap.
Right. Well, you know what? And that's the other question is, and so, but the scheduling stuff, that's not good either because that's going to create problems for some poor patient.
Absolutely.
And that's just terrible.
Absolutely.
And the doc needs to be paying attention because if I was the doc's malpractice carrier,
mm-hmm.
I would want to know that these things were remedied so that we're not missing records and notes and all this good stuff. Because if somebody's fooling with scheduling, who knows what else they're futzing with?
Right. The easiest appointments for her to know that I'm making are emergencies because they show up in red.
Right.
And so while I'm making them, boom, boom, boom. And the other day, Monday, she did 6 of them. And I went into my supervisor and I said, okay, I just made another emergency appointment here. And it's 12:14. She's at lunch. When she gets back, we'll see what happens to this appointment. 12:47, she came back. Appointment's still there. 12:53, it was gone.
Now,
I pointed it out to my supervisor, and, she kind of shrugs her shoulders.
Right, because maybe your supervisor feels she doesn't get any backing from the doctor or he doesn't get any backing from the doctor. And that's a shame. Now, I can tell you, like in my office, the scheduling software we use, you have the ability to go in there and see who canceled an event or removed an event. So when something's been moved or not moved or something, you know, I can hunt down who was the last operator to have done something.
That's not capable with this computer. The normal way you do it, yes, but I don't know why they have this back door. And I've told my supervisor the only two people that use this are you and her, and it should not be allowed.
Right.
But and like I said, I've just pointed out over documentation time after time after time. When I was on probation 6 months ago, I was on backup for whenever they needed help, and they, you know, she said, well, whenever one of your appointments is here, let me know. I'll put my initials on it. You know, okay. I will see how we want to proceed.
Deb, you got the possible tortious interference, but my advice in these matters are for what it would cost you to bring a legal action, given the fact this person probably doesn't have, at the end of the day, two sticks to actually rub together.
Yeah.
It's probably not worth pursuing, and then I would just quietly continue to pursue alternative employment while taking some ginkgo biloba for my mental health or whatever, St. John's wort or whatever you need.
All right. I'm doing better than I used to. But
well, you know what? And actually, it's an attitude thing. And at a certain point, what you got to do, and I've heard a lot of people say this, I can't live with this person, or I can't tolerate this environment. The answer is, if you get in the right frame of mind, you can just be like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm getting paid. I guess I could be stuck in a warehouse somewhere, putting the caps on toothpaste tubes or sticking labels on items like I used to do when I was in law school to make money. And go, you know what? This is better than that, so I'll just tolerate the horse hockey that's going on here until I find a better place. And then just keep counting the change you're making.
All right.
All right, Deb.
Thank you
very
much.
I don't have a great legal solution for you, but I got some practical advice, all right?
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That's why they call us counselors sometimes. Weekend appointment here, Carl Rominger answering your legal questions. Andrea, what's going on?
Hi, Carl. I am going through a custody dispute.
Okay.
And the daughter's father has had 2 DUIs, paid a high-priced lawyer $9,000, got one of them dismissed. He has moved out of state. I've had to get 2 emergency relief orders because he withholds my daughter when he does get her.
Okay.
Due to his DUIs, he lost all 3 of his employers and was earning $225,000 a year. They did assign an earning capacity that he appealed, which was yet, I guess, deferred and reduced his support. So he went without 9 months for employment and wasn't paying and was on probation and stuff. I want to know why they have these laws, and we're supposed to follow these laws, but yet when somebody violates them, they don't follow through with any type of recourse.
Right. You mean in terms of the child support enforcement?
In terms of child support enforcement, I've paid over $9,000 to a lawyer, all in legal fees, of which I've had to retain a lawyer because of things that he does, like withholding my daughter and getting emergency relief orders, and you know, he'll have her for the summer, and I have no access to her, don't know where her child care providers are, don't have a number to contact her.
You should be able to force contempt issues through the court. Have you not had a judge that's willing to effectively, kind of say to him, like, you're going to follow this order going forward or you're not going to get her?
No. I have had a judge who I think does try to be fair in the best interest of both parties, being able to have a bond with our daughter.
Right.
And that, I do encourage, I have a 12-year-old son who I've raised on my own without any, I have sole legal custody of him.
Right.
But, I would like to encourage a nurturing bond, but there isn't. It's, if I suggest something, it's always because I suggested, it's a no, as far as the father's end.
Right.
And so I feel that being that he does have the money to pay these high-priced lawyers, that, my daughter's being the one hurt in the end.
Right.
The DUIs, one of them, he had a DUI with my daughter in the vehicle, and that's the one that he paid $9,000 and had that all dismissed.
Yeah. That's not good.
So I just don't understand, what is it going to take besides my daughter being seriously injured or killed before, a court actually does do something.
So
is there anything else that I can do?
I mean, the short answer is, did you go back to court after that happened, that DUI?
Yes.
And the judge didn't find that to be a compelling circumstance to limit his contact?
He did find it, and he reduced the visits to 1 weekend a month. However, with him moving out of state and then not having a driver's license because of the other DUI, I still have to drive halfway to take my daughter down there, but they're not taking in consideration. Here's my major factor, that they're not taking into consideration that I have another child with a disability, and I have to drive down to Frederick, Maryland, 7:30 at night on a school night.
Right.
And I'm not getting home till 9:30, 10 o'clock, and by the time I feed her and bathe her and do her homework, which he does not do, she's not getting her proper rest.
Right. So I guess I don't know what to tell you exactly, except that you probably, I don't know who your lawyer has been. Have you been with the same lawyer for a long time now?
2 years.
And are they telling you that they've aggressive, sometimes you just get blocked by the judge.
Do I feel that my lawyer's aggressive enough? No.
Okay.
But that leaves me at a standstill with, I do owe him a balance because I'm so much in debt behind not receiving support and things that,
right,
were generally considered in my budget.
Right. And so, of course, the flip side is you kind of look at the lawyer and you go, well, I realize he can't rush to court all the time if I can't afford to pay him all the time.
Right. I mean, and I can't go retain another lawyer who I feel may be more beneficial to me because I can't afford another retainer.
Right.
So is another lawyer going to be willing to take payment?
Right, right. And that's always a problem. Well, Andrea, the short answer is I would just keep working with that lawyer and try to be as aggressive as possible. But it sounds like so far the court system's just sort of shutting you out on some of these important issues. And you're onto something in the sense that the fact that your husband has access to large amounts of money has helped him in the legal system, because the more money you can spend, the more angles you can work.
Correct.
And that's a sad truth about justice in the American system. I can tell you my own experience. If a defendant walks in, I'm not going to get an obviously guilty guy acquitted simply because he's rich, but I have a much better chance of winning an acquittal in a tight case, definitely, and sometimes even for a guilty person if the family can afford to spend oodles and oodles of money, whereas sometimes a very innocent person goes to jail because there's nobody there to pony up any resources for him.
Right.
And the weight of the government presses on him. And the same happens in custody cases. I got to take a break, but great talking to you. I wish I had a better answer.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
All right, Andrea. Take care.
Bye-bye.
This is Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger. I'll be back after the break.
I move for a bad court thingy.
You mean a mistrial?
Yeah. That's why you're the judge and I'm the law-talking guy.
The lawyer.
Right.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. That's one of my colleagues in court. I actually turned my cell phone on the other day and taped that exchange, if you believe that. Carl Rominger here, the show's Weekend Appointment, where I answer your legal questions. Next week, we'll be back with our financial advisor to talk about the finances and the law, retirement, divorce, and all those good things, estate planning. In the meantime, make sure you go to weekendappointment.com and claim your free will. If you don't already have a free will, you already have a will. Even if you have a will and you haven't updated it in a while, go to weekendappointment.com where you can get it updated. You can check it out. We might be able to help you. I tell people, if you haven't done a new will in about 5 or 7 years, it's time to get it checked out. There's a lot of things that may have changed in your life. Who you want to leave things to, your financial status, how taxes might be affected, and state taxes, all those things. So make sure you go to weekendappointment.com and check out the free will program. It literally is free. Skip, you're on Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger.
Hey, how you doing, Carl?
Good. What's going on?
I have a question in regard to carrying a gun.
Sure.
On my property, I have an acre property. When I'm out back cutting the grass or pruning or whatever, can I carry that gun on me concealed without any problems?
The short answer is now you're on your own property.
Absolutely.
Now, I know that in Pennsylvania, you can carry open anywhere because there's no law against that.
Okay.
On the other hand, carry concealed on your person, you're supposed to have a concealed carry permit. I know that in your own home you could carry it concealed on yourself inside your own home. I don't know if that extends to your out areas or not.
Okay.
So my general advice would be, until we can get a chance to research this, just carry it open.
Okay. Now, my next question is, on the street, or if I want to go from my house to a warehouse building that I own, how do I get the pistol and the ammo and a pickup truck to that warehouse so I can carry it when I'm in that warehouse?
The short answer is, if you don't have the concealed carry permit.
Right, which I don't.
Right. If you did have it, you just keep it right in your car, loaded right beside you if you wanted. On the other hand, if you don't have the concealed carry permit, the law says you can't have it loaded in the vehicle. And you're not supposed to have it readily accessible. So what we usually tell people is put the ammo in one container, put the gun in the trunk or wherever, so that it's not readily accessible. So you make the gun not readily accessible, and you keep the ammunition in a separate.
Okay, so like in a pickup truck, I can either keep the gun or the ammo in the back, and then in the cab, just have one or the other.
Yeah, and make it clear, and you should be able to safely transport it between locations. Two other things come into mind here, though. When you do get pulled over, you don't have to volunteer that you have a gun in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to allow anybody to search your car.
Right.
Now, they have to have probable cause and a warrant. So with that in mind, the police officer's not going to be any the wiser or really care if you're just writing you a traffic ticket. On the other hand, if you start volunteering that you have a gun, well, do you have a concealed carry permit? Then they get into the whole inquiry. And my thought on the matter is, if I have a concealed carry permit, which I do, and I have my gun in the car, I just tell them. On the other hand, if I didn't have it and I had my gun properly stored or even improperly stored, I wouldn't tell them.
Okay, but now you're not obligated to tell them, though, are you?
No.
With your permit?
No, and the only reason I do with the
courtesy
to them, so that they don't get flippy out if they see the gun, because usually because I have the concealed carry permit, I keep it readily accessible, which usually means it's under the newspaper on the passenger seat, right?
Okay. So now, once I get to the warehouse, if I have to go outside of the warehouse, can I just put it on where it's out in the open?
Yeah, you can open carry in Pennsylvania. Now, here's the one thing we run into. Sometimes we have these police officers who charge people with some theory of disorderly conduct because you're scaring people or creating a physically offensive situation.
Okay.
Yesterday, I'll give you by way of example, I'm at the golf course, and I wanted to show my buddy my new bow. So we're in the parking lot, and I'm showing him my new bow in the parking lot. And, of course, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, some yahoo is going to be like, oh, my God, there's somebody with a bow in the parking lot. Oh, my God. And do I want them calling the police and having these issues? And the short answer is, I thought a bow, most people are going to figure you're not going to go take out everybody at the dinner with a bow.
Right.
On the other hand, if I want to show my new shotgun, I'm never certain how people would react. And we saw an incident in Camp Hill not too long ago where somebody took a BB gun into work to give to a friend or something to borrow. And, of course, somebody called the police because they saw a guy with a gun walking into an office building, and then they locked the area down, and they emptied the local elementary school, and all this hysteria happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, of course, in my parking lot behind my law office, I'll tell you, I'm routinely pulling guns out, moving them between cars and showing them to people. And I always think about that. I was thinking, somebody coming down the alley is going to see me with a gun and think that something crazy is going on, and then I'm going to have law enforcement. So my practical answer on that is yeah, I don't see a problem carrying it open, but I try to minimize that. Have you thought about getting a concealed carry permit?
I thought about it, and I applied for once, and they turned me down because 34 years ago I was convicted of reckless endangering second degree. So I guess because of that, I never pursued it.
Are you in the same county?
Yeah, still in the same county.
Yeah, Skip, I would reapply, and if they turned you down, I would take it to the judge because realistically, I don't think that reflects on your ability.
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, that's been so many years that a judge is going to say. And here's why you're ready for why sheriffs sometimes turn you down, but the judge says yes. Here's the simple answer: judges have absolute immunity.
Yeah, sheriff has to be reelected.
The sheriff has to be reelected, and he has qualified immunity, meaning that theoretically you might be able to somehow sue a sheriff for negligently issuing a permit.
Right.
But if the judge orders it, the sheriff has to do it, and he's immune.
Right, I see.
So sometimes they make you skip that hump just to, skip something to make you go through that hoop just to get there.
Okay, just on a real quick follow-up. Long guns, carrying them in the vehicle, again, you have to separate the ammo from the firearm?
I think that I think that's what they say, is that they shouldn't be readily accessible.
Okay.
Here's the answer. It's sort of like the old days, guys would come walking out of the game lands with a shell in one hand and the gun in the other, even though it was slightly after hours, because they were always, they unloaded their gun to comply, but if they saw the record buck, they might just go ahead and take that last shot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but the Game Commission changed sunrise and sunset. In Pennsylvania, it used to be sunrise and sunset. Now it's 1/2 hour before to 1/2 hour after.
Right.
And they finally recognized that last half hour and that first half hour, you can pretty much see. And so guys used to, they'd be walking along and they technically unloaded in case they ran into a game warden, but they'd keep a shell handy in one hand. Well, that's the same thing they're worried about in the vehicle, which is, a gun's unloaded, but if you've got the clip in your left hand and the gun in your right, you certainly can load it pretty quickly.
But again, that would also apply to long.
I believe it applies to long arms as well. Although, you know what? I don't know. I don't know without really tying into the nitty gritty, because I've gotten lazy having the concealed carry permit.
Okay, buddy. Hey, thanks a lot for your help, Carl.
No problem.
See ya.
Thanks. I guess I need to do a little research there, Shane. Maybe go on and write something up here for the listeners, and maybe we could put something together. Why don't you remind me of that? We'll put together like a gun law expose so that folks will have a opportunity to figure out what they need to do. How much time do I have left in this segment? 1 minute. Oh, boy. Okay, well, let me get back to, I was reminding folks to get that free will at weekendappointment.com, but let me tell you the other advantages of going and becoming a registered user at weekendappointment.com. You get to get regular emails from me with legal tips and updates. You get to participate in the discussions on the board. You can actually, and people do this routinely, they'll see a legal problem that I've answered or haven't gotten around to answering yet, and they've had a similar experience and outcome, and they'll go ahead and tell people what they did and what happened. And it makes for a great give and take. And so you've got this built-in library of questions and answers and conventional wisdom. We've also got a political area where you can post your political thoughts. So make sure you go to weekendappointment.com. This is Carl Rominger. The show's Weekend Appointment. I'll see you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, answering your legal questions on Weekend Appointment. That's right. This is the show where a real live lawyer, myself, Carl Rominger, attorney at law, practice here in the mid-state, got a few years' experience behind me, answers your legal questions. What happens? You call in, you go to weekendappointment.com, you post the question, and we try to get you an answer. And we just were talking with a caller, had some good gun questions, and I was telling Shane that maybe what he and I need to do is take a little time and put together a series of questions and answers on gun issues so we can post on weekendappointment.com. So look for it there. If you're a registered user, you'll get the alert when it goes up, which is very handy. I had an article on there this week that I posted, a compilation of a few things about how big health insurers are going to stop selling new child-only policies. See, basically, it's called the law of unintended consequences. And by saying that you could not deny a child because of a prior existing condition, the health insurance companies realize that a lot of people are not going to pay to put their kids on their health insurance policy, and then they'll just pay for a child-only one at the time the child gets sick. And that's what I would do. That's what any rational player would do. So what a bunch of them did is said, you know what, we're not going to sell those policies. We're simply dropping them. Therefore, a lot of people who could have insured a kid, and they're saying like 500,000, 600,000 kids who would have been insured are not going to be able to get insurance now because these big health insurers are dropping these plans precisely because the government's telling them they'd have to sell them at a loss. You know what? When government starts telling people they have to sell things at a loss, that's when you run your economy into the ground. That's what happens in these little third world countries with price controls. That's what happens in these little banana republics and African strong-arm nations, why their inflation goes out of control, because they implement economic policy that makes no sense. It's popular. It's popular with the people. You know, a lot of people go, oh, this is great. This is great. Milk's not going to become any more expensive. This is great. It's great. They're not going to deny kids for prior existing conditions. But what they forget is that there's an economic reality for that, and there's no such thing as a free lunch. It really isn't, folks. And so if it sounds like there's a free lunch involved or something's going to get cheaper or better, there's got to be a cost. It's like life is double entry accounting. There's got to be a credit and a debit for every transaction. Remember that. Well, one of the questions on Weekend Appointment somebody posted here was, Carl, what is the law regarding car sales between private parties? Is there any warranty that the seller has to give? And the reason they're asking is their brother sold a car to somebody else, and they drove another 102 miles, and the transmission went out. And now they're suing the brother for the value of the car plus towing and storage fees. And they're saying, I thought a private car sale is as is. General rule, private car sale is as is, or it's, you know, at least as much as you know about it. So let me give you an example. If I take my car to the repair guy, and he says, Carl, your transmission is 100 miles away from exploding. And I'm not even saying this with a guess. I am telling you that you will have to shortly, maybe 50 miles, maybe 100 miles, but no more than 150 miles, replace the transmission. And then I go sell the car to somebody, and I say, as is, and they go, well, are there any defects that you know about? And I say, not really. That's fraud. And sure, if I knew about the defect, now how are you going to prove I knew about the defect? That's the other interesting question, right? Because it's the burden of proof. I guess I'm not going to get up there and perjure myself. And so if you put me on the stand and ask me, I'm going to say, yeah, I knew there was a problem. And then you're going to say, well, why'd you lie to me the first time? Well, that's why you don't lie in the first instance. If you have a car, and I'm thinking of a vehicle I had, it's just too shaky to sell to somebody else. It was just in such bad shape. And somebody said, you could just sell it. Just put it on the internet, put a couple $1,000s on it. I was like, no, that thing needs certain things done to it. I'm not going to unload it on somebody else. And I think because I had actual knowledge of those things, and that's the answer I put on there, is that generally private sale is as is. And of course, it's on weekendappointment.com, so you can read the question and answer yourself. But I put, if you have actual knowledge of a defect, I think you have to disclose it, otherwise it's going to be fraud. Now, when we're dealing with land, it's very clear that you have to disclose all the defects you know of, or should know of. But if it's a latent defect or a hidden defect, and cars, think about it. Anytime you sell a car, it's liable. If I knew when my car was going to break down, Shane, if I knew my car was going to break down, right, at a certain number of miles, I would probably 2 miles short of it breaking down, roll into the repair shop and say, listen, my transmission's going to go in 2 miles. Could you guys fix it now rather than have it break down at my house in the morning or out on the highway somewhere? Doesn't that make sense to you, Shane?
Makes perfect sense to me.
So what we've got then is a situation where I doubt you're actually ever going to know when a car's realistically going to break down. You might know that the brakes are thin. You might know that the engine's making a funny noise, but you might not know what that funny noise is or that it really means anything. And if a car's got 180,000 miles on it and the engine makes a funny noise, that might just be something it's going to do for the next 40,000 miles. So my whole point in all this is yeah, they're basically sold as is, but if you have actual knowledge, you've got to disclose it. Flip side is, here's the problem, buyer beware, because how are you going to prove that the other guy had actual knowledge? He's going to say, I didn't know. I thought the car was fine. So unless you happen to take it to the same mechanic who says, well, I had this car in here a couple weeks ago and I told that guy that this thing was in horrible shape, well, then you might be onto something. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. So that's the moral of the story, folks. Now, that's a question on weekendappointment.com. We get a lot of good questions on there. We get a lot of interesting stuff on there. I had, trying to think what else I've had on there that I thought was really interesting. I get a lot of times this question, and I know it's come up repeatedly. I'm not sure if there's one up there right now or not, but people want to know, should they remove a deceased name from a property title? And so what'll happen is, somebody passes away and then somebody else passes away. And, what do we need to do? Well, the short answer is if your spouse passes away, you don't need to change the deed. That's handled as by law. But if both parents have died and now the property's been given to 3 kids and nobody opens an estate and does something, and 20 years pass and then one of those parents dies and they try to leave a portion of their of their property, well, the titling issues get all goofy. So the short answer is you've got to clean those things up. If the two original owners, a husband and wife, own property together and one passes, you don't need to do a thing. If the second one passes, an estate needs to be open and property needs to be passed, people sometimes just keep paying the taxes on it. So it's still in mom and dad's name, but now one of the kids is paying the taxes on it, maybe even living in it, but everybody agrees it's owned one-third by the three kids. Well, you're creating title problems for down the road. You're creating a situation where somebody's going to have a problem. So you do need to clean up. I just found one here on Weekend Appointment that somebody asked the exact same question. Like I told you, it comes up again and again. And the answer is, yeah, you can't just wait. And this one looks like they waited 20 or 30 years, and now they're trying to sell the house. And, of course, it's still titled in some deceased grandparent's name. They're going to need to do a quiet title action and get that straightened out. And, of course, now you end up spending thousands of dollars with a lawyer when you could have done it for $100 in the first instance. Although sometimes people do this to try to avoid opening an estate and paying estate tax. And now you're going to end up owing Department of Revenue $1 billion as well. So my advice to you, quite seriously, is you don't need to change the property title when it's your deed and it's your spouse that's passed away. But if it's anything but a spouse, or it's a parent who's now passed away, or a grandparent, and there's no surviving spouse, you've got to get the title work done and the estate open and all that good stuff done, or you're just going to goof things up for generations to come, and you may risk losing the property at some point as well. So very serious issue. You need to deal with that. Again, if you want to see these questions and these types of answers, you go to weekendappointment.com and you'll be able to look them up. This is Carl Rominger, the show's Weekend Appointment. I'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here on Weekend Appointment, answering your legal questions. If you have a legal question, you want to post it for me to do here on the air, go to weekendappointment.com. I will answer those online and on the air. I'm chronically behind because we get so many good questions on the website, but trust me, I will answer it. Now, if it's something that needs urgent attention, it doesn't need just a quick once-over, you can also get my phone number at weekendappointment.com as well as my email. And we're always happy to have you as a client. I'm an attorney here in the Mid-State. We practice in all areas of the law. I think we currently have 4 attorneys in the office, and we'll have 5 here shortly. So we can pretty much handle whatever you need anywhere in the Mid-State. We're a general practice, but, of course, each lawyer has his or her own focus. So make sure you give us a call. Just go to weekendappointment.com, post your question there, or more importantly, get the phone number and call or ask for one of the lawyers to make an appointment with you. And, of course, if I'm not immediately available, don't be afraid to use any of the other lawyers. Everybody there is competent. I've handpicked them. They're a select legal team there to help you, so make sure you do that. I had a question on weekendappointment.com. Let's see. Our son-in-law has decided there's no need for attorneys to divorce our daughter. He printed off a bunch of forms from the internet and filled in the blanks and wants her to sign. He plans to do the filing ASAP, but since there's a complainant and a respondent, isn't a master's hearing needed? I thought no fault would be the best way, but there's custody of a minor child involved. And, of course, I put on there, have them come see me because we have a lot to discuss. But here's my point on this. These internet divorces are great if you truly have no property, no anything at all. What people forget about is there are all kinds of problems that come up. Retirements, titling to cars, titling to mobile homes, deeds to homes, expectancies, interests, all kinds of things that need to be addressed in a typical divorce. And where there's custody, it's best to meet with a lawyer so you understand all your rights, and also so that a comprehensive custody arrangement can be made formally or informally if necessary. But I think it's very important that you do that. So that's an important question. I guess what I want you to take out of it is don't do the internet divorce. See a real live lawyer in your local community first. And, of course, if you need a divorce lawyer in any of the central Pennsylvania counties, my staff would be more than happy to get you a meeting so we can talk to you about it. It's a free consultation on the divorce, so don't hesitate so you can find out what your legal rights are. And I've actually gotten a lot of divorce cases off the show here, alimony cases, child custody cases, people who've called in who are listeners. I've been happy to help them. And a lot of times it doesn't take that much lifting to get them on the right track. Now, here's one question I got on weekendappointment.com. No will, stepmother's family gets all. My father died 6 years ago without a will. I would never do this while my stepmother was alive, but now that she is failing, I'm wondering if I can file anything after her demise so that our side of the family can recover some of the money that had been dad's, such as inheritance from my grandparents, or does the stepmother's children get it all? And what I put in here is you may have already missed a statute of limitations. You need to talk with a lawyer right away. The short answer is in Pennsylvania, a step-parent can be left stuff, but if there's a biological child, it's possible for them to take against the will or potentially have a stake in the estate, because you can't completely write out your spouse, but you can write out your biological children. So I'd have to take a look at the exact scenario and see what happened here. But this happens a lot. If a parent doesn't make provisions for their children, there are certain things they may be able to do. And again, I don't know enough about the factual scenario here, but what I was concerned about is this person waited 6 years to do anything. These are the kinds of questions you need to get in front of a lawyer right away. And I probably should do a little research just to play out all the different scenarios here, depending on the relationships, etc., and see if there was anything she could have done in the beginning. And I know somebody out there is like, come on, lawyer, how come you don't know the answer off the top of your head? Well, you see what happens is we have these piles of books, which these days is basically just a giant online service. And all these questions and all their factual permutations can keep us busy for hours and hours and hours and even days and days sometimes. Although you really don't want to pay a lawyer to think about something for days and days. Hours and hours is pretty typical, though. So wanted to let you know what you need to do when an issue comes up. Even if you don't think you're going to pursue it immediately, you need to see a lawyer to make sure that you're not going to blow time frames. So breach of contract, for instance. Somebody owes you money under a contract. You can blow that off for a while, but not more than 4 years. Personal injury, you got 2 years, but you can't blow it off for more than 2 years. And defamation, slander, you got a year, but you can't blow it off for more than a year, or you lose your rights. So remember that. Check with the lawyer first. It can't hurt to just learn what you might be able to do, even if you're not thinking of going forward with it. What else did I want to talk to you guys about? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm going to trial this week, so I'm going to be kind of busy getting ready for that. I do have a hearing on property down in York later this week. It's a concept of somebody relying on a building permit where the township issues them a permit. They don't complete it in the prescribed time period within the permit, but the township continues to work with them for several years, and they continue to rely on the permit. So we have a detrimental reliance type argument we can bring, which comes to mind. If you're ever involved in a zoning case or a land use case, a couple things you need to do. Number one, if you do get a zoning letter, check with an attorney. Don't just take the township's word for it. You're not necessarily in violation. And even if you are in violation, there's a lot of ways to grandfather yourself in. Just because the zoning hearing officer has taken a certain position doesn't mean the board or court might not take the opposite. So you should always check that with a lawyer. Also, before you build something or lease some property, you can save a lot of heartache by checking the zoning first. And there's a very easy and expensive way to do that, which is first go to the zoning hearing officer in the township and say, hey, I want to lease that spot down there. I'm going to put a dog grooming place in there. Is that cool? Before you sign the lease. I get these cases where people wander in and they've signed a 1-year lease for a business. They've opened the business, then the business gets shut down because it's in violation of the zoning. What they should have done before they signed the lease, or as part of the lease, it should say, that this is for this particular purpose, and if it can't be used for that purpose, then you can get out of the lease. And then if the zoning officer comes and shuts you down, you haven't done your homework on the front end, which you should have done, at least you're protected. But usually just go see the zoning guy and you say, hey, this is what I want to do. And if they say no, you find another location. But if for some reason you got your heart set on this location, then you come see me. And I then go back through everything and say yay or nay, talk with the zoning hearing officer, find out why they want to do it a certain way. And if they're right, we defer to their better judgment. If it's a questionable call, we get an option to lease the place, and then we take it to the zoning hearing board. Or maybe what the zoning guy's trying to tell you, but you're not reading between the lines, is you can't do it unless you get these certain things in a row, and then we help you get those certain things in a row. That might be an exemption. It might be a conditional use, a variance, although variances are usually not for purpose. They're usually for offsets, parking, for instance. So maybe you don't have enough parking spots to use what you want to use it for, but maybe you can convince the zoning hearing board that while other businesses might need a lot of parking spots because people aren't hanging out in your business, they're just picking up and dropping off their dogs and cats for your pet grooming business. You don't usually have a lot of people there at any given time, so you don't actually need, 7 parking spots. You could get away with 4, and it's not going to create a parking problem. And so that would be a variance issue. There are a lot of things available to you out there if you take advantage of them. But I guess what I want to make sure you know is when you have a zoning issue, a land use issue, make sure you check with a lawyer if you're not happy with the answer. But make sure you first check with the township before you jump. Don't put the fence up without a permit so that you try to have me defend it so you don't have to take it down. It's thousands to put it up. It's thousands to take it down. It's crazy what people do sometimes without checking on these things in advance. In the meantime, I'm going to get wrapping up here, but I want to remind you guys, go to weekendappointment.com, download your free will kit. With that free will kit, you get a real will. What happens is you download it, you print it out, you fill it out, you send it in. Tammy gets you an appointment to come see me. We go over everything by hand. I write you a custom will. If you don't already have a will, it's great. If you already have a will, we can at least look over your will. You don't have to write a new one. I can just look at the old one and say this is great, or we can update it. At the same time, I'm going to go over living wills with you. I'm going to go over powers of attorney and any other legal issues you want me to touch on. We get to know each other, and then down the road, if you need a real live lawyer to work for you, I'm there for you. So make sure you go to weekendappointment.com. It's just like it's spelled just like it said, weekendappointment.com. Of course, you can also look me up on Facebook and on Twitter. On Facebook, if you go to facebook.com/Carl.Rominger, that'll get you to my Facebook page. Feel free to friend me. I'll accept you as a friend. That way we can stay in touch. And, of course, you can go to weekendappointment.com, which I already mentioned, to get my email address and telephone number so that you can catch up with me that way. Folks, it's great working with you. Carl Rominger here with Weekend Appointment. I'll see you next week.